Thanks to all the panelists for taking time for this conversation. It's my absolute honor to have this 40 minutes with four eminent speakers from absolutely diverse industries. And it's going to be an interesting and an insightful conversation. So the base has been set, we are living in a pandemic world today, and customer retention is not the later part to be thought about. It's also the priority which is taken over the growth. So while most of the businesses today are thinking about not just growing their customer base, but also managing and maintaining some of these customer retention due to the economic pressures which Amit mentioned, due to the store closing and changing of the priorities, and a lot of things are going online, right? The consumers have more power today, where they are searching for the services online. They are seeing the better ways to transact with the business. And with that, what we have also identified that almost 70% of the sales related queries, they come from the customer services channels. So my first question is to Manish Patel. How does your organization currently view sales and service? Like, do you find that increasingly the customer service agents are literally doubling up as the salespeople and guiding the prospects towards purchasing your products or the services?
So we got to go back in time. Okay, we as MG were very late entrants into the automobile sector. I mean, we had matured OEM players like Maruti, Honda, Toyota, Suzuki, Mahindra, Tatas, right? So somewhere, both from a product as well as a service perspective, we needed to be a bit different. And again, not just from sales and service perspective, but within the product also, how could we be more customer focused, right? That was the core agenda. So we had 4 pillars. Obviously, 2 of them were innovation and the other one was customer services. So innovation, how do you bring in more customer focus from within the vehicle? And customer service, not leave it at 180 degrees, which means customer having shopped for the vehicle, coming to a dealership, and then we forget about it, right? So we wanted to go the entire 360 degree post-sale of vehicle. How do you keep yourself engaged with the customer, right? Understanding his issues, problems. So there were a host of services that we enabled from a vehicle perspective as well as from a process perspective at our dealerships. Glad to say that we are there where we wanted to be from OEM perspective. There are certain learnings that we have within us, which we are taking the next steps. But again, the definition that we built was more around product and service. So how do you engage with the customer more? Once he or she has bought a vehicle, for example, constant feedbacks, follow-ups, ease of doing business from a vehicle servicing perspective, ease of booking a vehicle for a service, ease of making a payment for the service. All these were nailed down at the time when we launched our vehicle. So that's one way we kept ourselves engaged with the customer. Post-pandemic, and we never had envisaged this situation that we currently are living in. So dealerships started to close down. How do you keep on engaging with the customers? So we had weird requests from customers. I have already booked my vehicle. Unfortunately, I'm not getting it delivered. No problems. We say we will have the vehicle delivered at your home or office, wherever you are. So we had that separate cycle that we had built into our experience cycle. The other thing that we did also a bit innovative was, can we take the challenge of making sure a customer can, in totality, make the payment of our vehicles online. So he or she doesn't need to go to the dealerships. He or she has a complete virtual view of the vehicle, features. The only thing that he or she needs to do is have a test drive in our vehicle. He or she decides to buy the vehicle, payments made online, vehicles delivered at home or office, and they're done. They don't need to practically walk in into our dealership. So we had some virtual dealerships created in some of the metros, which quite successful. We have had some customers who have gotten into this experience. Again, I mean, paying for a vehicle of 20, 25 lakhs online is not something that everybody would like to do, but we have had some customer experiences where we have had this wow factor built into it.
Nice. Yeah, because for any consumer buying a vehicle, usually it is like once in a 5 to 6 years time span, bare minimum, right? So that's where the segregation of having a product and the services, keeping in mind that this consumer has to be a future like should talk good about the brand, right? It should provide the references. So that's where the engagement, a continuous engagement, a positive feedback, going back, it's of utmost importance. But the way we look at it, probably in say a 1 mg kind of a setup, where you know that the consumers are dealing with you in a day-to-day basis. So how that has been different? Are your service guys also have doubled up something like a with salespeople, like giving recommendations around say alternates, or trying to upsell your services over the phone or over the different communication channels? Priyank, this is a question to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vandana. So, as Manish told, it is on the automobile sector, and we are from a healthcare sector, which is quite different. And healthcare sector is, as you mentioned, is not a sector which a person interacts in 4 to 5 years. He interacts in like 4 to 5 days, even a couple of months. So there is a very frequent interaction of the customers with us. And healthcare is a sector in which service plays a very important role. So if you are waiting for your medicine, or if you are waiting for your lab test, the service levels have to be at the notch, because otherwise the customer experience gets delayed, and the customer gets a lot of pissed off. So in Tata 1mg, we generally divide the service levels basically in 3 buckets. One we call it as the ordering experience. Second is the engagement experience, that is the delivery part. And the third is the grievances handling experience. And in all these 3 experiences, we try to give the best in class experience to the customers. On the onboarding part, we try that whenever there is a lead of a lab test or a pharma company, a pharma product, this particular lead goes to our sales team or to our customer success team, who immediately call back to the customer to explain all the nuances of the lab test, or all the nuances of the medicines. When you say upsell, we generally try to upsell the things which are not demanding for the prescription. But if a doctor has prescribed a particular medicine, which is complex medicine, we try to deliver that particular medicine only, leaving apart the normal OTC medicines like paracetamol and all. But when it comes to lab test, our agents are well qualified to make the customers understand the nuances of couple of tests, or they also upsell about more tests in which the value can be added. For example, a person who is going for a full body checkup is like upsell for the antibody test for the COVID if he or she is vaccinated. And once this particular thing is closed, that means at the agent level, once the booking is closed, we also take care of the delivery part, and we try to deliver the product, or we try to collect the blood in the stipulated time only. And we try not to delay. Definitely there are delays because of the unforeseen circumstances of the weather and all, but we always try to deliver it within the preferred time, within the stipulated time that we have promised to the customer. On the grievances handling part, Vanna, we listen to the social media very closely. We use couple of tools to listen the social media, and once any problem or any customer grievance arises on any of the issue in social media, we respond to that particular customer very promptly and try to act and clear all the doubts and grievances quite promptly. So I think these are the three pillars that we are following in Tata 1mg for the customer experience, and hopefully we are improving day by day in all these fronts.
Absolutely. It's like you mentioned, it's super critical for you to focus on speed, right? And this is how you do the bucketization, so that you bring in the speed, you bring in the focus in the specific area, and you plan resolving some of those queries accordingly. But how is it different for you, Advisha, because you had the digital and the e-commerce for home care in Unilever, right? So how does it work in your setup, where you have salespeople and you have your customer service people, and does speed count there? And how does your service folks also double up or try to be the sales guys there?
Sure. So let me speak more from a direct to consumer perspective here. And digital transformation is now forcing all companies to really look at this in a more digitally driven way, right? And this is not a change that's been driven by companies. We think that as organizations we're doing this, we're doing that, but this change is actually dictated by the consumer, right? And we basically, as companies, focus on building our strategies around how this behavior is being manifested by the consumer, right? And we've seen, especially last year, when it was such an uncertain time, and consumers' expectations were very different. The scenario was completely different, and also the fact that there was a little bit of a different way in which different categories had to react to it. Certain categories were like thriving with demand. Certain categories were completely low on demand. So when you're in such a dynamic scenario, and in this world that we're living in, Unilever has thankfully been prepping itself and being a thought leader in being ahead of the curve. And that helped us, really look at and handle the situation promptly. And what we do is we leverage heavily on people data centers. So we have these, 30 people data centers all across the world. And essentially what this data center does is, one is to ingest all the primary research, the insights that come from, so basically customer service has become also more of a research model for us, where whatever we are listening in from the consumer gets fed into this data center, right? And all your social listening. And what it really helps us to build is a digital, what we call DVOC, which is digital voice of consumer. And that's where all your insights lie. So today what happens is, because the kind of what kind of a distribution model that an FMCG has, and it's very difficult to really understand what is the demand in the market, what are some of the queries that consumers have, what are some of the products that we should be really looking at serving, right? So then when this intelligence gets combined and we're able to look at it in a very dynamic, in a live manner, it just helps us feedback those insights to both our our salespeople who are actually servicing our distributors and retailers, to provide them with the right kind of products. At the same time, also help us develop products that are in line with what the consumer wants. So that's how we are looking at it at Unilever, and that's great.
Okay, so this 30 people setups which you have created, are they only listening to what is coming from the different sources and analyzing the data and creating the services around it, or they are also responsible to basically respond back, say any social conversations happening, and they are supposed to respond back as well, or it's just a pure research setup?
So, see, it's not, so obviously to respond back, there is obviously different teams that is, so basically the PDCs are mostly structured in a hub and a spoke model, right? So there is a PDC lab where you would have the supply of the data. So it's coming in continuously, and we're making sure that, we have capabilities that are bringing in new analytics tools. And then you have something called a PDC squad, which works closely with the business. So this helps Unilever have a close view of the business. They can interact and receive questions, delivering insights, and this can help the organization grow and scale AI. So basically, that's one of the basic problems that most large organizations face, is that data is so scattered that it is something for us to bring it together if we want to really be agile in responding. So while response is going to happen, say, by another team, but what is important is that they have access to this data. So tomorrow, whichever team is servicing, so we have the central view repository of data that any team can use when they are looking at responding. So it's kind of a centralized system. Of course, there are different teams that handle different aspects of it, but that's how we look at it.
Oh, great. Ravish, we have you in the call.
Yes, Vanna. Hi, apologies. There was some problem. Yeah.
No problem. Ravish, you also head the digital business for IndusInd Bank, right? Where you deal with consumers like us, and the kind of a setup, what you would have to service your customers would be way different. What is the change that you are seeing today in the conversations, what your service agents are having today, than pre the pandemic times, what they were having then?
Yeah. So I think the biggest change is there is a huge difference in the psyche of the customer, right? As we, that's the biggest difference that we have seen now. There was always a need to put certain, from a servicing aspect, how do you reduce queries? How do you reduce service requests? How do you reduce, right, complaints as well, right? The initial thing, that's what banks used to typically do, right? So you started the entire way that you then looked at customer needs. You tried to then understand, okay, that is the reason why a customer is calling in, and then you would put them on a self-service sort of a model, right? Now the biggest difference is, for example, customers are demanding that, right, upfront. They're saying, okay, this is not available on your app. Can you prioritize it, right? And I think that's a big change, that without us even prioritizing certain things, now we have to also factor in, because you just don't go by volumes, you don't go by. I think the biggest thing is the customer feedback is become like, while it was always important, but now at least banking institutions and financial services institutions are hearing a lot from the customer, right? So whether it is on the call center, whether it is on the email, whether it is in the app store, whether it is on the general the owned page, the owned media assets of the bank, right? Everywhere the feedback is coming in, and I think it is what we are doing is channeling it through proper structured processes, and the entire objective is to ensure that we give a lot of these services online. Because see, when you talk about, when I joined in, we were discussing automobile, right? It's a 4 to 5 years sort of once the customer is coming in, right? Then we talked about specifically medicine, right, where the consumers are coming in 4 to 5 days, right? Here the customers can come in, by the way, on one day they can come in 4 times as well, right? So there's a huge difference in why the customers are banking, right? Because in a month they will come to the digital asset around 8 to 10 times. Now how well can you get those conversations going, how well can you get that engagement going, will determine whether they'll stick to your digital asset or not. I think that's where we are currently at.
Yeah, so with that, what are the challenges or the roadblocks you're facing in trying to bring that faster customer service to the forefront of your organization? Because you're hearing from the customers that this is a feedback they are saying, they are asking you make so much of a changes into the app. So what kind of roadblocks are you actually experiencing to get this going at a speed?
Yeah. So see, as at least when we look at and understand the entire gamut of the way banks are architected, right? They have been architected, and this is all financial institutes, right? None of them are very different from one another. So the difference is that how well can you adapt to the architecture of the 2020s and the 2030s, right? I think the idea is that because right now banks are architected in a slightly different manner. So how well can you move forward? I think that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to move to because the requests, while they come in, we can put it on front end, but it's not just digitizing the front end. It is how well can you digitize the front to back, right? That's the whole question that we are solving. So while we have been keeping pace and trying to deliver a bunch of these innovations to the customer on the front end. And just circling back, the way banks operate, India and Southeast Asia, right, typically have been at the forefront of innovation on the front end. I think it is the innovation at the back end where we are also learning from, our, let's say, the players in Europe and in US, etc. Right. So the idea is that how can you automate and digitize front to back, and I think that is the biggest challenge that is there. The idea is to move gradually to an architecture which is microservices ready, which is scalable, reusable, modular, and ensures that it is a never fail sort of an architecture, right? Which is while it is very easy to say, but what we saw day before yesterday on Monday, what happened with the Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram, right?
Correct.
So that is the biggest challenge. I think front end innovation is somewhere that we are already core, and specifically our bank has always been at the helm of things in the front end innovation. I think the idea is how do you stitch up the entire front to back. I think that's where the story, and that's the biggest challenge, and that's what is going to differentiate as well in the future, right?
Right. Manish, how is it different in an automobile sector? Do you think that you face any roadblocks to bring in faster customer service, just to ensure that this is at the forefront for your organization's priorities?
I mean, Ravish talked about innovation and digitization, right? So the good part with us is we don't have a legacy, right? We started from scratch. We have the right foundation for getting near to the customer sooner than later, from an applications infrastructure perspective as well. The demand that comes from the customer, I mean, if you give something from an app perspective today, they will be forthcoming towards you, right? How do you cater to that demands faster is something that we are working on. Simple example is if I can remotely operate my vehicle, which is starting my air conditioner remotely, what more functionalities can you provide me that I can sit in my office, make my vehicle comfortable when I'm ready to drive? So those are the things that are coming in from customers. There are a second set of customers from a service perspective. How can you make your service, how can you enable touchless service? Again, this is something that came in post-pandemic. So we did some innovation. We are in the process of doing some more, so that the customer actually doesn't need to be at the showroom for things to be done on his vehicle. Some unique things that we would be trying on in the future as well is give them proactive notifications on some things that might probably we see or envisage failing on their vehicles. Proactively let them know that, hey, there could be an issue coming towards your way. We would recommend you to go to a dealership. These are the things that we as an organization are more challenged about. Last but not the least, the DNA within an organization to be customer focused is very important. We may have n number of applications, we may be training all our service personnel, but that one personal touch with one customer is very critical, because that is the thing that can make or break your next sale.
Absolutely. So, while Freshworks is also a customer engagement and a employee engagement and a customer experience platform, we get to hear a lot of stories from the customers where they typically say that, hey, you know what, I want to improve my CSAT. Okay, how can I do that? And it is somewhere, it is related or correlated to the speed at which the customer service needs to work upon, right? Because if I'm a consumer, if I think as a consumer, if I am browsing through some of the renowned apps, the kind of services what I'm getting there, I tend to compare all the other brands with those services, right? So how do you see that when you've been given a CSAT, or how important it becomes for you to bring an improvisation on to that CSAT, this question is for Priyank, because you are an app business company, right? So I'm sure you would be having some sort of feedback coming back to your app where people are rating you. So is this the kind of a business metric that you look upon?
Yeah. So thanks for the question, Mandana. It's a wonderful question. So CSAT is for a company like healthcare is very, very important, or for any other company of digital domain or a offline domain. CSAT is always important. So in Tata 1mg, we take the NPS scores, we take the surveys very regularly from the customers to understand that whatever the experience that we are giving, either it can be a ordering experience, it can be a delivery experience, and it can be a grievances handling experience. In all those three fronts, where are we standing? And what measures or what steps we should take to improve the customer satisfaction, and how we can make it a wow experience for that. So we are doing this particular customer satisfaction surveys and taking the NPS scores very frequently after the orders also. Also, we have a system that internally also, because we are all customers as an employee also, we are also customers from the Tata 1mg. So we have our internal groups also, where we take the very honest feedback from the employees, like what is their opinion on the onboarding, on the delivery, and on the grievances handling. And those particular feedbacks are also quite important for us to incorporate.
Got it. So I heard you that it's a very important business from that perspective, but from an ESAT perspective also, right? Where
Right.
the employees are, are the integral part to build your businesses and to have that kind of a brand experience to be
Right.
provided to your set of customers. Anvisha, how are you managing CSAT? How important is CSAT to your organization? And do you get into this situation where they say that the speed is the important factor, which is always called out when a customer provides a CSAT?
So I think it's also a function of, again, the category, right? So it's more, while speed definitely is a hygiene factor that consumers do look at, like a consumer does expect a certain delivery time. But at the same time, it's also about, do I need a certain product? So there, first we, just if you take a step back and see how people really, and I'm just talking about, say, take an example of somebody ordering online. So for example, that's where people expect the fastest speed, right? And how do people really look at any online ordering? It's three buckets mainly, right? One is your regular, and if you take an example of
Oh, we've lost her.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, now you are.
Sorry, I think there was some network issue. Yeah, so we basically look at three buckets, right, in which consumers order. So if you look at typically say if you look at household supplies, a person will order, one is their regular, you have your list that you're going to buy every month. Then you have a top-up list, which you will buy, say, once a month. You'll go back and say, okay, there are certain items you don't order every month, but you might do like a top-up, or you find some deals and hence you order. And the third is something that I need right now. That something I've just run out of seed detergent. I've run out of, say, a bathroom cleaner, and I need it. So sometimes that also happens. So it's kind of in that zone, and that's where you will look at different expectations for speed. That's why you would look at different ways in which consumers are going to look at it. Right. So it's also a function of where the demand is coming from and how is it going to be serviced. Right. And one thing and one aspect of speed is also in terms of how are you managing the final delivery along with it. So it's not just about I got my product on time. There is also a little bit of challenge that you face in terms of in what state does the consumer then receive the order. Right. It has to be also in the right So if you look at something which is perishable, say foods and, in the foods category, then there is no leakage. So everything needs to be taken care of. So I think it becomes like a holistic challenge for a brand to solve when it looks at speed, even whether you're partnering with a delivery partner or you're doing that on your own. I think it's very important. But yes, when you look at, the next hour delivery as, the next tagline that, everybody is looking at, I think one thing that we need to also look at it with is profitability. Like, how do you balance the two and look at it? And speed definitely is something that consumers expect. I think as organizations and companies, we also need to kind of look at it realistically and see how is it and what is the best way to scale that, and not just look at it only from one unidimensional view of speed. It is definitely important, but you have to basically balance out the other factors with it.
Got it. Okay, now this question is for all five of you. I'm going to pose the options, okay? So there's this book, Cut the Weight Playbook, which we had published. And there are some 5 steps every organizations go through. And it will be different for your organization because you represent different industries. The way the customer service is there in your industry is absolutely different, right? So I would go around the table. I'll just ask, okay, these are the 5 things. What do you think? Which of those 5 points or does resonate to you? Okay. I'll start with Ravish. The first point is make your service accessible. Go automation first. Shift from reactive way or a proactive way. I did hear this in one of the conversation. Empower your agents and refresh your metrics to put more focus on the customer. So which are the 5 things which resonates well in your parlance, Ravish?
So, see, to be very frank, I think metrics are the most important, right? Unless you can measure what the customers are going through, right? In a really quantifiable manner, which, typically we learn in MBA called SMART, right? Which is still accessible, right? So I think making metrics and ensuring that, they are accessible to everyone so that you can improve on. I think that will be, measurement systems would be the first most thing that you will need to do. And that's something that is a hygiene, right? Number 2 would be making it accessible for me because, for the customers, I think some of these accessibility becomes an extremely important point. For example, if in accessibility, for example, again, you can do multiple things, right? You can do front to end back automation. You can take a request, ensure that the status is visible. So you can do multiple things, by the way, on the front end, right? And then finally, to ensure to take care of the redundancies, right? Now, customers go to web, not able to access certain services, they need to have a fallback mechanism. So ensuring that you create that sort of an empowerment in the system so that, customers, basically we get it first time right for customers. I think that will be the sequence and these will be the 3 most important things for me.
Got it, Ravi. So you've covered the 3 points out of the 5 what we discussed. Manish, how does 1MG would look at this? Would it be make your service accessible, go automation first, shift from reactive to proactive, empower your agents, or refresh your metrics to put the customers at the center?
So I would say customers first, which is put the customer at the center, because that's who is going to get me the recommend or get me a next sale over a period of 3 to 4 years or 5 years, right? As Ravish mentioned, matrix is equally important to us. Okay? It's predominantly an escalation matrix that we have in place. And we would like to find what failed where and how could that have been improved. No matter how much does an organization try, failures are bound to happen. How do you improvise on the failures is something that we need to continuously work upon. So matrix comes in as the next one. The third one obviously was follow up and close the
Sorry, no, I was saying automation first or reactive to proactive or empower your agents.
Empowering our agents, I would not say the agents, empowering our sales force or after sales force, to the extent empowering our employees to make smart and quick decisions is what also is something that we have embedded in our DNA. So a vehicle being brought into service, part needs replacement. There are set rules that a person who is actually attending the vehicle makes the decision to replace the part and go ahead with life. Get the customer out of your domain, make him happy, and be it. So we don't have too many hierarchies built into our approval matrix, as we say, that that require a customer to wait longer than he desires.
Got it. Okay, Anvisha, what do you resonate with the most with these 5 things which I had mentioned? Make your service accessible, go automation first, shift from proactive to reactive, empower your agents, or refresh your metrics to put more focus on the customers.
So, of course, as you would have guessed from all the whatever I spoke, obviously putting customer at the center, being
Totally.
customer centric, definitely I've spoken enough about it. So let me talk about some other priorities, right? The other is being accessible. And it's not just about being accessible, it's about being present, being unmissable. Because, you need to be there when the consumer is looking for you. And if you're not there, and you need to be there when, when somebody wants to reach out, right? So it has to be like you're forever present for the consumer and for your B2B customers as well. And the third is, I think, what is also important, is to empower your teams, right? One example, that really helped us scale up was the Shikhar app, which empowered, these retailers to place orders online. And it really picked up. I mean, we had launched it in 2017, but, you had more than about 3 lakh retailers using the app by December 20. You had 60% of the retailers in towns with a population of, 5 lakhs, less than 5 lakhs, they started using it. So you actually see that they got empowered. And, when you, and if you prepare for it in advance, then, when things like these strike, you're already in that position to be able to service, because you've already invested in a technology. So I think it's important to also empower, because ultimately it's, it is also technology that kind of acts as a vehicle to the, as a means to an end, right? So I think these would be priorities.
Priyank, what are the priorities, or what do you resonate more? Do you want me to repeat the options?
Yeah, no. So Vanna, honestly, all the 5, but since you've asked like which can be the most, see, for a healthcare setup, which is quite critical, because we are delivering the things like medicines and lab tests, right? So accessibility is very important, because if a customer is not able to access our customer care on chat or on phone or any of the services, it will be useless for us. Also, empowering agents is very important, because in the business that we have, the agents are not doctors. They understand the tests, they understand the medical terms to a certain extent only. So I think empowering the agents and to make them explain the nuances of the medical science, so that they can better upsell or cross sell, gives us a edge over other competitions. So empowering agents is also quite important in the field of healthcare. Also, that you mentioned like the metrics, I think all of us are mentioning that metrics and data to understand like whether we are doing it right or whether we are doing it wrong. You have to understand it from the data and the metrics. And all those CSAT scores and the NPS scores that we are taking from the customers are important for us. So I think these 3 factors are very much important for a setup like healthcare, and I think rest 2 are also important, but I think these are the most one.
Okay, awesome. I hear the common thing from everybody, like refreshing your metrics, putting more focus to your customers being at the center, is the first most point which everybody resonated to. With that, I think I completely enjoyed this conversation, learning a lot from 4 different industries at one time in 30 minutes. It was like an awesome conversation.